وآل محمد.
Thank you, brother, for that beautiful recitation. Can we get another lot salawat for him? Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I just want to remind the audience that we do have a children's program in the Arabic hall. So if you'd like to use that facility, inshallah, we encourage that, please. Inshallah, we'll be having English programs for this weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the Shahadat of the fourth Imam. We're blessed, to have Sheikh Salim here with us in our community. Before we'd have to call him and invite him specifically to come back and recite here. But alhamdulillah, because he's here, we are truly blessed to have him here, that he can come on any of the weekends, and he chose this weekend. So please help me invite him up with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من ليلتنا هذه إلى قيام يوم الدين. Respected brothers and sisters, we've gathered here on this Thursday evening to commemorate the Shahada anniversary of Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zainul Abidin al-Sajjad alayhi salam, in order to attract the special mercy of Allah to this gathering and inshallah the favor of the Imam of our time. Let's all recite a beautiful united salawat, please. I want to convey my condolences to the Imam of our time on the Shahada anniversary of his great-grandfather, Imam Sajad alayhi salam. Tonight is the 25th night of the month of Muharram, and it's the night of the Shahada of the Imam alayhi salam. And it's an occasion of mourning for the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. My condolences to all of you. May Allah reward you for your participation in this gathering of ours. Inshallah, I wanted to speak something about the spirituality of Imam Sajad alayhi salam. And I hope that Allah will give me the opportunity to be able to continue this topic over the next, tonight and then the next two nights, inshallah. Different aspects of the spirituality of Imam Ali ibn Hussein al-Sajjad alayhi salam. So, we live in a world where there is a renewed interest in spirituality from religious people and from people who don't have that much of a connection with religion. And you see this in the form of, for example, spirituality in the workplace. You see, in the San Francisco airport, for example, now they have a yoga room that you can go to and do your thing there. And of course, there's a lot of exercise benefits. I'm not putting down yoga or anything like that, because I might get some tomatoes thrown at me if I do. But it's sometimes used as a means of connecting to some spiritual side in the human being. And there's just in general people people are looking for solutions to a problem that maybe they don't even know what that problem is. And in this modern form of spirituality, it very much is tailored towards the modern human being. If you look at it, like what is it? What are the aspects of modern society? Things like instant gratification, things like personalization, customization. You can choose your own background. You can choose your own, case on your phone, and you can choose your own flavor of spirituality as well. You can do it on your time. You can do it in the, kind of like how they have you can do like remote work, and you can be, in an island in Hawaii and can be working for a company in the East Coast, right? So same thing, you can do your spirituality at your time. And many other aspects of it. I don't want to get into all the discussion of what is the modern form of spirituality. But for believers, it's very important for us to understand what is that spirituality that Islam has taught us. Let's understand it. What I feel that there's been a couple of reasons why sometimes people are going after that form, and they are not very much, let's say in some cases, they're not going towards the spirituality of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam. One of them is a lack of understanding. Purely just people don't realize the treasure that we have. People don't realize the value in what we have. Sometimes people think that whatever is new is what's really like good, like the newer the better, not realizing that sometimes in the hunger for, let's say, technological advances, people are losing aside they're setting aside valuable parts of our tradition and our heritage. So tonight I wanted to explore one of these concepts that, one of the aspects of this question, that what is the spirituality of Imam Sajad alayhi salam. You know that the Imam had some famous names. One of them is al-Sajjad. Sajad is the one who frequently used to perform sujood. Another one is Zainul Abidin, the one who is the adornment of the people who worship. And these names were given to him by the Muslim community at large. If you go and look in the books of history, when, like for example, the brothers and sisters of the Ahlul Sunnah, like if you go to their books and you look at their history books, and you look at the biography of Ali ibn al-Hussein, you'll see that they speak about him as being a'badun nas, the most worshipping of the people at that time, and they were in awe at the quality of the worship of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. In one hadith, his son, our fifth Imam alayhi salam, he says that my father was such that whenever, you've heard this hadith before, whenever he would remember the blessings of God, he would go and do a sajda. Whenever he would read, the Quran, he would go in and do sajda. Whenever Allah would remove some type of calamity or affliction from him, he would do a sajda. Whenever the plot of the plotters would be, kind of defoiled and sort of taken away from him, he would do a sajda. Whenever he would be able to reform between two people who were at odds with each other, he was able to make peace between them, he would go and do a sajda. Right? And it's amazing that, if you think about it, the fact that that's mentioned, it means that was one of like the things he would frequently do. Right? He'd be trying to make peace between people, which is quite amazing in and of itself. Because sometimes we think about him being just, on his prayer mat, but clearly, there's a lot that he was doing. And we know from history that, according to some of our great scholars, he was the most political of the imams, right? Which is a side of the imam that's often ignored. And then the Imam ﷺ says, "Kana atharu sujudi fi jami'i mawadi'i sujud," meaning that the mark and the effect of doing that sajda was on all parts of his body. Now, sometimes people think about this and they think that, okay, so he was bruised and kind of battered, maybe all over the body. But remember that when somebody is constantly in the state of doing sajda, it has an effect on the way that they are seen by others. And we know that the Imam alayhi salam's, his grandeur and his haiba and his the aura around him was so great that crowds would split when he would enter them. And they would make way for him, and everyone would just stop, and they'd be like, this is Ali ibn Hussein. And you know the famous incident when he goes to the Kaaba, and everyone just parts. Like this is the type of effect of sajda that was seen from Imam Sajad alayhi salam. Now, in one hadith, we're told that whenever he would do such, and I'm inviting us to think about these hadith, because we've heard them, but sometimes maybe we don't get a chance to reflect on them. One hadith is very interesting. It says that whenever he would do sajda, when he would raise his head, either his eyes would have been filled with tears, or he would be seen as having perspired a lot. Okay, and maybe if we just think about it, we're like, well, that I don't really understand that. That doesn't make sense to me, right? Like, what kind of spirituality is this, right? It's not convenient. I have to redo my... whatever. Okay, anyways, that one. So it's not convenient, right? If that were to happen to me. But if we go and think about it deeper, right? It's like, well, why would somebody get so affected by doing that sajda? Like, what type of thing is going on? What type of conversation is happening? What type of spiritual experience is happening in that sujood to make the Imam alayhi salam be so affected by it? Right? It really makes you think, right? Every time, either this or that. Meaning that either it was an occasion of grief or it was an occasion of fright. Right? But both of this grief and fright is not just a low level type of thing. Like somebody watches a horror movie or they watch a soppy type of drama or something. It's not that. No, this is something which is of a very high and lofty nature. This type of grief, this type of sadness. And then we're told that his ibadah was so all-encompassing. It was something that he was so occupied with that sometimes it was as if he wasn't there anymore. Okay, like one story goes that there was a fire in his home, and he was busy on his prayer mat. He was engaged in prayer, and then everyone gets alarmed. They go and they put out the fire, and then afterwards they go to him and they say, what happened? What did what was your situation? What did you think about this? Or how was it for you? He said that I didn't even notice that it took place. There's a big fire. At that time, they didn't have huge houses where it could happen here, and then other people don't notice, right? It was something that normally a person would notice that. So his response is that my preoccupation with the fire of the hereafter kept me from paying attention to the fire in my own home. Okay? Now, somebody might look at that and they might be cynical, right? They might say that, well, shouldn't we be aware of what's going on in our home? After all, isn't our responsibility to put out the fire if it's at home? Right? It's a good question. But here's where we have to realize that the Imams alayhim salam, they had different states about them. We know that Imam alayhi salam, when he was in ruku' and a beggar comes into the mosque and he asks for charity, no one responds, he does his responsibility. Right? He holds out his finger while still being in the remembrance of Allah, and he gives him charity. Here, for whatever reason, the Imam alayhi salam, it wasn't his responsibility to go take it. No, we don't know the details, right? All we know is this one incident. So we shouldn't try to look at that dimension of it and try to go deep into it. We know that Imam alayhi salam took care of his responsibilities. He was very capable of doing that. But what we can understand is that his connection with God was something that was profound. And when we're trying to understand this concept of Islamic spirituality, the spirituality of Imam Sajad alayhi salam, it's good for us to keep this in mind. And the question I want to pose is this, that what made him so keen on worshiping Allah? What was his motivation? Because if we understand that, then we can understand what made Imam as-Sajjad as-Sajjad. So inshallah, I want to present some points about this question, that what made the Imam alayhi salam so keen on worshiping Allah? What was the point of his connection? What was the reason for it? If you can, inshallah, recite a salawat, please. So, we have a tradition, a hadith. There's numerous hadith like this, but This one is from one of the companions of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. His name is Tawus. And Tawus was really impressed with Imam Sajjad alayhi salam in many ways, and he would try to like learn from him, and he would try to like, kind of observe him and see how he can learn from him and apply it in his life. So he says, one time I was in Hajj and we were near the Kaaba, and we're spending the night, late into the night, worshiping, and I saw that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam was there, and he was worshiping near the Kaaba, and I was watching him, and after some time I saw that he went into sujood. So I said that, let me go and learn, like here's this great individual, let me see what is he saying in his sujood. So he goes near him, and he hears him saying these lines. He says, Ubayduka bifina'ik, miskinuka bifina'ik, sa'iluka bifana'ik. Right? He says that your lowly servant is at your doorstep. Miskinuka bifina'ik, the one who is poor, the one who is faqiruka bifina'ik, the one who is poor and needy is at your doorstep. Your beggar is at your doorstep. 4 lines. Okay, very simple. And Tawus, later on, he says that whenever I had any problems in my life and I started making this dua, I found that Allah answered all my duas. Right? So he took it and he actually used it in his life. Right? It's kind of interesting. But we know that du'as are not just like something where it's like a formula, like a magic formula, right? It's something which helps us connect to Allah, helps us like speak the language of the heart. So what is the language of the heart? What is it that the Imam al-Islam is saying here, right? If you look at it, one of the points that the Imam al-Islam is talking about is his attachment with Allah. And this is one of the things we see in Imam Sajjad's life, is that he was deeply attached to Allah. Now, there's people who study human beings, and sometimes they want to study what are some of the main problems that we have, and how is it that what can we do to solve those problems? So that there's a lot. One of the problems that we have in modern society is people have a lot of mental health problems, right? There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of uneasiness. People who don't feel happy, right? And even sometimes in our own community, there's people who are good believers, they have strong faith, they're practicing, and sometimes if you go to them and you ask them, like, so do you find a sense of like ease and sort of like itminan? Do you have like that confidence that's supposed to emanate from your faith? And they'll be honest with us and say, no, right? I'm lacking some things. And it's important for us to like, understand what are the causes of that. But and of course, it doesn't mean that they're incomplete or they're bad Muslims. Sometimes it's just a matter of addressing some things, addressing some things of the past, changing some of their lifestyle habits, and they will see improvement. But one of the things that they say is that if you have attachment to beings who are there for you, their support for you, they can help you, that helps you a lot in life. Like, meaning that what? Meaning that we human beings weren't created to go about life and deal with all the challenges alone, right? It's just never been there for us. And I want to, take you back into history, into your history of your own life. All of us were at one point babies, and at that time, we were very much attached to another human being, which was our mother, right? There's no way that we weren't, right? And at that point, every need that we had, it was taken care of by our mother, maybe our parents, right? Or if somebody didn't have a mother, then there was somebody else who was taking care of them, stepping in, playing that role of the mother, right? And then usually what happens is that when we grow older, then we start to become more and more independent, and we get into this sort of state where we think that, okay, now I can do things alone. And that's sort of the trend. And it's kind of seen as not being that cool or that being that sophisticated to like really be attached to, let's say, others. Like, it's sort of a sense of like, I want to be self-reliant. I want to be, and of course, to a certain extent, that's good. It's good to be, to learn how to be independent. It's good to like not rely on others to make all of our decisions. To like, we should be able to like, fend for ourselves. We're supposed to be able to, kind of live and not depend on others. That's part of growing up. However, deep inside of us, we know our limitations. We know that we're completely dependent on everything around us. There's no way we can survive alone. Right? It's ridiculous. The idea to say that we can be alone and survive is absolutely ridiculous. And if you think about it, something as small as a particle of a virus can be something that just wipes us out, right? Let alone so many other things that could wipe us out. There's so much that happens, every moment, even just in our body. If one of those electrical signals were to just misfire, we'd be gone. So it's a type of thing where, in reality, we actually are very dependent, and we need to be attached. But whom do we need to be attached to? And they've done studies, and they say that people who have an attachment to God, right? God is plays a central role in their lives. They tend to be happier people. They tend to be people who can deal with life's problems in a much better way. But of course, we're not looking at this type of spirituality just so that we can deal with life's problems. We're trying to understand, both for this world and the hereafter, what is our responsibility. And this is where we can look at the words of the Imam alayhi salam. Imam Sajad alayhi salam was somebody who was very attached to Allah. For example, there's a famous line from the famous dua of the Imam alayhi salam, which is called Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, where the Imam alayhi salam says, Allahumma ja'alni asulu bika inda darura. It's quite amazing for us to be able to both read about the qualities of Imam Sajad alayhi salam and then to be able to see how he got to where he got to from his own words. And this is what we can see in the Sahifa of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam had this, so many du'as where we see different aspects of his relationship with Allah, how he used to view the world. And the greatest of our scholars, they say that if somebody wants to achieve the high level of awareness of Allah, not just like low level, mid level, but high level, one of the best ways of doing so is by deeply studying the du'as of Imam Sajad alayhi salam. Like there are these treasures of tawheed in them that are embedded. They're very subtle, very precise, and deep. And it was one of the things that I have to say that maybe before going to the hawza, maybe somebody told me that, I'd be like, okay, maybe that's just kind of exaggeration, because you can read the book, you can read the translation of the dua, and maybe you don't see that. But after going to the hawza and then seeing how our greatest of scholars, they explain these words, they decipher them, they go deep into them, and with such precision, then a bit of it starts to click for me that indeed, like, this book is something which is profound. So the Imam alayhi salam, he says that, "Oh Allah, whenever there's a situation which is difficult, let me asulu bika." Asulu bika is a very interesting word. In Arabic, it is used for the movements of a lion. When a lion is like, doing what it does, it goes around, right? It's sort of like moving, it has a mission, it's tasked with something, right? Now, some people, when they're faced with difficulties, they sort of freeze, right? They can't do anything. They're just like they feel very weak. They're in misery, right? But the Imam is saying that when my responsibility is to be active, to go about doing things and to have strength, I'm going to find that strength from you and with you. That's how he's talking to Allah. It's a very powerful statement. Right? He's not saying that, oh Allah, he's not just saying that, oh Allah, when I have a darura, I have some like difficult sort of compelling circumstances, then I want you to comfort me. It's beyond that. He says that I want to be able to like do what I have to do with strength, and I'm going to find that strength with you. And then he says, وَأَسْأَلُكَ عِنْدَ الْحَاجَةِ, and when I have some need, I want to ask you. وَأَتَضَرَّعُ إِلَيْكَ عِنْدَ الْمَسْكَنَةِ. Maskana is something which, it comes from the word like maskan. Maskan is like a home. Maskana means when you're in a situation where you're stuck, right? You kind of like when a home is a home because it's in one place. So maskana is when you're stuck. You don't know what to do. So he says, in that case, أَتَضَرَّعُ إِلَيْكَ. Allah, I want it to be the case that you allow me to plead to you in that situation. There are people who make du'as every Thursday night. they're here, they make dua, but then when some bala comes to them, they don't have that energy and they don't feel that motivation to go and beg from Allah. So he's saying, oh Allah, I want to beg from you in this case. And then he says, وَلَا تَفْتِنِّي بِالْإِسْتِعَانَةِ بِغَيْرِكَ. Oh Allah, don't test me or don't, I don't want to fall into this trap where I would have to seek help from somebody other than you إِذَا اضْطَرَرْتُ, when I'm facing difficult circumstances. And I don't want to go and ask somebody else when I have these difficulties. So the Imam al-Islam is you could say this, one way of describing this is that he's exploring the type of attachment he has with Allah. He's saying, oh Allah, I want to be with you even when other people might feel detached. Right? I want to be with you at those times. Now, why is it that he's asking this? When we go to the Quran, Allah Ta'ala describes himself in a way where it's almost like, why would we not want to be attached to him? Like, I'll give you an example. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لله المشرق والمغرب فأينما تولوا فثم وجه الله إن الله واسع عليم. Where is the face of Allah? Every being has a face. Where is the face of Allah? Right? They asked Imam Ali alayhi salam this question. He said, light a fire. And then once they lit the fire, then he asked them, where is the face of the fire? They said that, well, everywhere you look at the fire, right, that's the face of it. You can look from this side or that side, it's facing you. So he says that, so the fire is such that everywhere you go, it's his face. Same thing with Allah. Everywhere you go, Allah's facing you. He's looking over you. He's watching. He's there for you. Aynama. So, when a child is crying for its mother, they're crying because they know that there's only some times when their mother is there for them. Right? They're not, that's why there's a gap sometimes. They have to cry but then, as the aql develops and somebody gets to this realization, no, there's somebody who's there for me even when my mother wasn't there for me. Right? All the time, wherever I was. One of the qualities of Allah is that He's willing to respond. Because, when you look at other beings, there are times when they're responsive and there are times where they are unresponsive. Allah says, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي Surah Baqarah فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِي فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Let them call upon me. And when they call upon me, I will answer them. Ud'uni astajib lakum. One of the names of Allah is Al-Mujib. Al-Mujib. He calls Al-Mujib. He is the one who is the answerer. Why? Because there are other people who answer, but they're not always there for you, and they don't always pay attention to you. Maybe sometimes they're asleep. Maybe sometimes they're not capable. Maybe sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they're out of resources. They just can't be there for you. But Allah is Al-Mujib. In the Quran, Allah tells us that Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, that when he's talking to his uncle Azar, he says that, Ya abati, lima ta'budu ma la yasma'u wa la yubsiru wa la yughni anka shay'a. He says, oh my father, use your intellect. You're worshipping these stone idols, and they should not be worshipped. Why should they not be worshipped? Because they don't hear, they don't see, and they can't help you. Obviously, if you're going to worship a being, that being should be seeing, but not just in a normal, they should be all seeing. They're always looking out for me. They're always hearing whatever I have to say to them. And they can give me anything that I want. That's the type of being that I want to be worshiping. Not this type of thing that you're building here. So, that's one of the another quality that Allah says is that He's so capable of taking care of the needs. He says that Inna Allah huwa ar-razaqu dhul quwwatil mateen. He is the one who is not just the raziq, He's the razaq. Right? He's extremely providing for us in ways that we can't even understand. Even after our death, let's say somehow we're able to see those things that were hidden from us, still we won't understand. The extent to which we're dependent on Allah and His system of rizq. And He is very strong and He's very firm. This is the type of of Lord that we're called on to worship. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he says that when they tell him that, okay, we're going to be taken over by the army of Fir'aun, he says, Kalla inna ma'i rabbi sayahdini. No way. What you're talking about is wrong. That's not the type of right understanding of Allah that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have an understanding of Allah who is ma'ana. He's ma'i. He's always with us. Right? We cannot be but that Allah is there. And sayahdin. He's always there to guide us. Even in this circumstance right there, even when it comes to like a dead end in the dunya, Allah is there to guide us out of that. That's the type of belief that we're supposed to have. That's the type of being we're supposed to be attached to. So that's why, and I'll end with this incident, inshallah, and just conclude and move into the Masa'ib portion. That's why we have this incredible story from the life of Imam Sajad alayhi salam about when he was younger in his life, and there was one time where the Imam alayhi salam fell sick, and his father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, was concerned over him. This was before the events of Karbala. So he fell sick, and then Imam Hussein alayhi salam says that, what can we do for you? Like, when you're sick, sometimes you want special, maybe food, special sort of care. You want, something special to drink, whatever. What is it that you want? Right? He goes to his son, Imam Sajad. He says, what do you want? So Imam Sajad alayhi salam, he says that, I don't want to say anything that would go against the will of God, right? And it's a very deep statement. I mean, I don't pretend to like try to understand the depth of the Imam's statement here, but I just want to quote the incident. He says that, I do not want to suggest something to Allah when He's the one who's in charge. Now, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is so proud of his son. He tells him that these words that you've said, they remind me of the words of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was about to be thrown into the fire. Then Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him and he says that, what do you want at this point? How can I help you? And Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam says that, I'm not going to take help from you independently of God. Right? God is with me. He's the one who's supporting me. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for us. He's the one that we want to rely upon. And because of that, I mean, not that it's wrong to depend on people, but Nabi Ibrahim wanted to make it clear that Jibreel, even in this state when I'm about to be thrown into the fire, right, I don't consider myself as somehow being detached from Allah. Right? Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Nobody is ever just born and then they're gone from Allah. Allah is with them. He's attached to them all the time. So, in that case, here Imam Sajad alayhi salam is saying that I don't want to. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam is comparing him to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is the extent of his attachment to Allah, and he knows that Allah will take care of him. It doesn't mean that he's not going to take medicine or whatever he needs to take, but he's showing that even when he's sick, right, he has this connection with Allah. We hope that these type of stories and these hadith and these ayat help us to understand more of our responsibilities, more about the nature of the beautiful nature of Islamic spirituality, the spirituality of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Please recite salawat. So tonight is the night of the Shahada of the Imam alayhi salam. He was martyred, according to some sources, at the age of 57 years old. The one who martyred him was the Umayyad Khalifa of the time. The Imam alayhi salam lived a very difficult life. We cannot really imagine the experiences that the Imam alayhi salam went through. Just as an example, when the Imam alayhi salam arrived in Medina after the incidents of Karbala, he actually didn't live in Medina for a number of years. And they asked him, why aren't you living with the people? Because he said that these are the people who betrayed my father. Right? They're the ones who abandoned us, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. I can't bear to even see their faces. So for a number of years, the Imam alayhi salam was living in the desert. And during that time, he was reliving and mourning and preaching and reminding people and teaching them of the tragedies and the masa'ib of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. صلى الله عليك يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين أيها السجاد يا ابن رسول الله يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. On this last night of the Imam alayhi salam's life in this world, he was with his son Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. He tells his son, "Oh, bring me some water. I want to renew my wudu." This is the last night that Imam al-Sajjad will perform his sujood on this earth. This is the last night that Zainul Abidin will perform his ibadah on this earth. He tells Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, "There's a camel that I have for 25 years. This camel has served me. It's taken me for Hajj. It's taken me on different errands that I've run. Please take care of it after I leave this world." See how compassionate the Imam alayhi salam is, even for the camel that he owned. When they begin to perform the funeral rites for the Imam, they begin to wash his body. They're surprised. They see some black bruises on the back of the Imam. They ask each other, "Where did these bruises come from?" One of the people says, "I know. This is the one who at night time would carry those heavy sacks to the different homes in Medina. He would provide for those families. He would leave the food at their doorstep, but they never knew that it was Zainul Abidin who was taking care of them. Now who is going to be there to take care of them after the martyrdom of Imam Zainul Abidin?" When they asked Imam Zainul Abidin, "What was the most difficult part of all the events that you faced?" the Imam alayhi salam said, "Asham, Asham, Asham." What was the journey like? In one hadith, the Imam alayhi salam describes his situation. He says, "They put me on the back of the mount without any saddle. The ladies were there without any covering, but we were accompanied. This was not an ordinary journey, brothers and sisters." He says, "We were accompanied by a head atop a spear, whose head it was. It was the head of my father Hussein." The Imam says that whenever any of the children would begin to cry in this journey, whenever the soldiers would see tears from their eyes, they would take their spears and they would hit those children with the spears. When we arrived in Sham, the people had gathered. They were happy and celebrating. They told us that we are the prisoners, the captives, the fugitives, the rebels. The Imam alayhi salam faced so many difficulties, but one of them must have been when he was burying the body of his own father. The Imam alayhi salam had to go to Karbala. Imagine the scene when the bodies are unburied on the battlefield. They say that the Imam alayhi salam knew which body was his own father's. He told the Bani Asad tribe, leave this body, I am going to bury it myself. But when he goes down into the grave, they say that he took some time. You know that when you put a body in the grave, you have to face its head towards the Qibla. I don't know what the Imam did with the body of his own father. But when he writes on the grave of his own father, he says that this is the grave of the one who was killed in Karbala, atashan and ghariba. He was the one who was killed when he was thirsty and he was a stranger from his own homeland. They say that the Imam alayhi salam, whenever he would eat or drink, his eyes would be filled with tears. They'd ask him, why are you crying? He would say that I'm crying because my father was killed without any drink, without any food. One time when he saw the butcher slaughtering the sheep, he burst into tears. They asked him why. He says that they gave water to the sheep, but when they butchered my father and his family, they didn't even give them any water. Ala la'anatullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun. May Allah Ta'ala accept this majlis from us, may accept this mourning and this grieving from us. We ask Allah Ta'ala to purify our hearts from all the sins and to make us be true believers. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us be committed to the path of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, and that we perform our duties in the time of the ghaibah of our Imam. We ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of the Imam and to make us among those who truly await him. We ask Allah Ta'ala, by the sake of Imam Sajad alayhi salam, to cure all those who are ill from among the believers of their sickness and to help all those who are oppressed. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.
Ya Hussein. Please come forward for the matam. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last time. Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last time. Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last time. What a wondrous scene, a flower in the plain, my wounded Lord Hussein lying there to die. Nothing does he see but his grandfather, his heavenly mother, come here to our side. Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last time. Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last time. Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, Zainab run to him, see him one last. The blood upon his face, the blood upon his neck, all still better than what will happen next. Soldiers crowding round, pointing to his throat. The Imam of his time, he lies upon the ground. Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time. The dust upon your eyes, the feeling in your throat, the desperate children's cries, the screaming of women. But all within your mind is calling for Hussein. Your brother is in pain, and you must fly to him. Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time. Sakina at your feet, you look into her eyes. Does she realize what will now occur? The greatest of mankind will meet the cruelest end, along with his loyal friends, and who will now guard her? Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time. Like a lioness worries for its young, you gaze from on a hill, your body's cold with stress. The body is it yours, that screaming is it yours? You see his arms and chest not moving anymore. Two orphans on a plane, God knows how hurt they are. Zainab and Hussein, so close but still so far. Two orphans on a plane, God knows how hurt they are. Just Zainab and Hussein, so close but still so far. Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him, Zainab, run to him. See him one last time. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there, leave me there. Hussein. محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى جميع شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل مخرجك وجعلنا من أعوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Everything good? Good. How are you?